Have you ever stopped to wonder how many times it has happened to you that you're playing a game of chess and suddenly you find that absolutely everything seems to be going completely wrong? Your opponent is doing much better than you. All of a sudden, you need a miracle to be able to completely turn this game around, but you don't even really understand what happened. Well, in this video, I'm not only going to show you what happened, but I'm going to show you how to do it so that you're the one. When you do all of this to your opponent, it is actually your opponent who is going to need a total miracle to win the game. Actually, in this game I'm going to show you, the Scandinavian defense is played, but that's not the most important thing. In fact, on this channel, we've seen thousands of times how to punish this defense, and we've also seen quite a few times how to play it to our advantage. You already know that the opening in chess is not the most important thing. Why? Because as soon as the opening moves are over, the real chess begins. For example, in this game, after pawn takes, this pawn wasn't immediately recaptured because that would be the traditional Scandinavian defense, and it could be quickly kicked out with knight to c3, as we've seen on the channel. The move knight to f6 was used, which is a kind of gambit, okay, where it proposes to recover this pawn a little bit later with the knight, or if the move c4 is used in the game, which is what happened, defending this pawn, okay, black tries to play this e6, right? What for? So that when these pawns are exchanged, black is a pawn down, it's true, but in exchange for what, chess teacher? We haven't given away a pawn for nothing, right? Now, in exchange for having much better piece development, we have two pieces developed and our opponent has none. Well, from here on, it gets interesting. This has merely been just an opening. On the channel, we've seen a wide variety of different openings, so let's focus on why what I just mentioned actually takes place. At this moment, what characteristics do we see in the position? Let's try to turn this into an interactive class, in a way that we can all learn and grow together. The idea is that here, the problem white has is this four pawn that is advanced too quickly. Since it has advanced too quickly, it leaves its partner, the d pawn, backward. See? This pawn, why is it a backward pawn? Because it has no pawn either to its side or behind it, therefore it's a backward pawn. Its c partner has advanced, and its e partner no longer exists. Therefore, here white, if they don't want to be very inferior in controlling the position, must play d4 immediately. Because if not, we're going to react with c5, and we're not going to let them play d4 anymore. You get it? Therefore, they must play d4 immediately, which is what they used in the game. Careful, is it a good move? Yes. What problem does the white player have now? That he hasn't developed any pieces, see? And we're already on our third one. Sure, this might seem insignificant, but as the game progresses, the difference between our active pieces and the opponents will make the absolute difference in the game. You'll see because you're gonna love it. The game continues with bishop d2, blocking the check. Could we exchange? Yes, but then we'd slightly improve the rival's pieces. So we're gonna ask ourselves the following. If my opponent is threatening the bishop, but this bishop is very well placed where it is, well, I'll defend it. With the queen, queen e7, so that if you capture the bishop, well, I replace it with my queen, check, and on top of that, I attack this point here. Careful, do we want to trade pieces when we're down a pawn? No. It wouldn't matter if we traded these two bishops, it wouldn't matter at all, because we're trading the opponent's only developed piece. In fact, the game continues this way. Bishop takes b4, and queen takes b4 check. Well, there's only one way here not to lose a pawn, right? This pawn is well defended with the bishop. It's true, it's being attacked by two pieces. Let's see how it continues. But the truly important one is the b2 pawn, because if this pawn is lost, these two pawns will be left hanging, meaning they have no pawns in adjacent columns, and we'd also be threatening a very poorly defended rook. Therefore, white must play queen d2 here. Key question, can the c4 pawn be captured? No, of course not. You can't capture with the bishop because we'd lose the queen, and you can't capture with the queen because we'd lose the queen again with bishop takes c4. Therefore, this pawn, no way we're taking it. Perfect. This pawn, obviously, not either because it's well defended. So I ask you, would you capture the queen? Would you move it away? Or would you defend it with a pawn or a knight, for example? What would you do? Think about it, and now I'll tell you the correct solution. There are several correct solutions here. The best thing is not to exchange queens, okay? Although technically playing knight c6 would be a good idea, because if they trade queens, the knight would come in threatening this fork, right? The best thing, without a doubt, would be to move the queen. Remember something? We're down a pawn. What does that mean? It's true, we have initiative in exchange, developed pieces. But we don't want to trade pieces, especially the queen, because we'll reach an endgame down a pawn, and obviously that endgame will be a loss for us. Therefore, we want to move the queen away and keep the queen on the board. So, chess teacher, why is it placed on e7? Simple, we've detected that the opponent's king is defenseless. It's here in the center on an open file. An open file is that file where there are no pawns, so we place the queen to start threatening discovered attacks. What's a discovered attack? Well, it's when we move the piece that is between the attacker and the defender of the check. Therefore, we would be threatening, for example, bishop g4, discovered check, bishop takes c4, discovered check. That is, here, the player with the white pieces already has to be very careful. For example, would it be a good idea to defend against the discovered check with the bishop, bishop e2? Well, no, it would be a horrible idea because we'd simply play bishop takes c4 and this bishop would be pinned. Therefore, the defender of the pawn wouldn't really be defending the pawn because it's pinned. So, chess teacher, how do I stop the check? Would knight e2 be possible? Neither, because the knight would simply block the bishop and bishop takes c4 would again win back the pawn. Remember well, if we're a pawn down and have better initiative, once we win back the pawn, we'll have better initiative for nothing, so we'll be much better off. In this case, then, how should the white pieces block the discovered check? Well, there's only one option, and that's to place the queen on e3. Logically, it wouldn't work on e2. Why? Would you be able to find the solution of what would happen if this queen is placed on e2? Well, for example, it can be followed by knight c6. Now, we're threatening this point here. We're threatening this point here. The typical fork advance with the move d5 wouldn't work because knight d4 would simply come, threatening the queen, and this queen can't go anywhere good. If it goes up, it loses it with check, and I take the queen. And if it moves away from the pen, then we could simply, for example, capture with a discovered check. How interesting, right? So we reach a conclusion. The only way, remember how we got here, don't be afraid to review because it's very important for it to stick in your head. They're trying to exchange queens, right? We don't want to because we're a pawn down, and we place it in a spot where we create problems for our opponent. It's important to know the discovered check. Very well. Then we reach the conclusion that the only possible move here is queen e3. How interesting, right? Normally, if you're watching this game and you see queen e3, you don't know why it happened. Now you've understood perfectly why, move after move. Remember that you can watch this video as many times as you need. No problem. Very well, how does the game continue now if they've already blocked the discovered check well? So indeed, we'll continue developing our pieces. Knight to 6 is a very good move. Now we'll see why this advance isn't possible. We'll see it now. Very well. First, what are we doing? Developing 3 pieces while my opponent has none? See? The queen doesn't count as a piece because the pieces to develop are minor pieces, knights and bishops. We have all of ours, my opponent has none in exchange for a pawn. But wait, chess teacher, why can't they make this move against me again? They're threatening the bishop and the knight, so I'm about to lose a piece. Well, that wouldn't be possible because there's the move. Knight to g4. Beautiful, right? What are we doing? It's very simple. I know this is a high level class, but I'll explain it simply so you can all understand it and improve a lot, okay? We're threatening this triple check to the king, queen, and rook, winning the game immediately. But what happens if white defends this point here with the queen, as it's the only way to defend it? Remember that, for example, it wouldn't be possible to defend it with the knight, but why would we do that? We could simply follow up by bringing our knight up to the g4 square here. The opponent's queen would be forced to move away. We're threatening a whole variety of different things at once, and the position is just great. We collapse. So, one way or another, this queen must come to defend. But if she defends, what happens? The discover check is available again. And then we could follow up with, say, bishop takes d5, discover check, then I'll take this pawn. If you block with the bishop, I'll take this one. This would be a disaster, right? So we conclude that after this knight to c6, d5 is impossible. It's that simple. Do you understand? So if d5 isn't possible, what do they do here? Now the white player plays knight to f3, much better. He develops a minor piece, doesn't make the mistake of advancing this pawn, and tries to defend his position a bit. But naturally, when we're a pawn down and want to seize the initiative, since we have all our pieces developed, let's improve them. This knight starts attacking fiercely, and it's a real threat because right now it's attacking a queen that, depending on where she goes, will be in trouble as she must keep defending the king. Therefore, she has no choice but to retreat to e2, because if she leaves this file, what would happen? Discovered checks with the bishop, so queen to e2. And now, how do we continue? Well, here it might be time to castle. And let's think. Would you castle kingside or would you castle queenside? The right move would be to castle queenside. You know why? Because we bring this rook into the attack immediately without losing a tempo. We castle, good, while bringing one of the rooks into the central files, which in this case are one semi-open and the other open. This is semi-open, why? Because there's only one enemy pawn. Very well, how will things continue? Well, now they must try to kick out our knight, for example. They must try to keep developing their pieces, however, they're already too late. As you can see, the opponent's king is in the center. He tried to be too cocky, and now the king won't be able to castle. He's going to have a very hard time. At least to castle, he must develop this bishop. And to develop it, he can't even go out here because of the queen, or here because of the pawn. So he tries to kick out this knight from here. What would you do, friends? I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think. You can always stop the video to think about it on your own, okay? Very well. The correct move is not to move the knight. How about that? Would it be a good idea to move this knight, chess teacher? Well, don't misunderstand me. It wouldn't be a bad option to move the knight. However, our opponent would be gaining time and we'd be losing it. When we have such an advantage in the position, sometimes we don't care as much about material. And in this case, the correct move that the player with the black pieces found is this one. Bring in the last missing piece into the attack. And this is already devastating for our opponent. Here, the player with the white pieces has already reached that moment we talked about at the start of the game. He probably doesn't even know it because he thinks he's going to win a knight and then he does it. He captures this knight. Watch out! It's not that capturing this knight is a bad move. It is. Understand me, it is a bad move, but any other move would have been bad too. Black's position is infinitely superior. Let me explain. Here, Black has simply coordinated their pieces well to carry out a lightning attack. And it starts in the following way. The queen moves away to unblock the rook's file, facing the queen and the king, winning material. And in this case, we do it with a check, so as not to lose any time. The first move, as you can see then, is this queen b4 check right here. Blocking with the knight would be stupid. Forgive my expression, but simply a move like bishop c4 would win the queen. See? The rook is threatening the queen and king. And logically also the bishop. It would be impossible to move the queen because it would be an illegal move. Therefore, the only way to stop the check without losing the queen is to block it with the queen herself. You understand this? If you have any doubts, you can review the game from the beginning. No problem, okay? Very well. And now how do we continue? Well, now we're going to take advantage of the fact that the queen was forced to move, right? From the center file where she protected the king to perform a discovered attack. Both bishop takes c4 and bishop takes g4 would be possible. Bishop takes g4 is a bit stronger. Why? Because it's threatening the king's defender. And now you're going to see why this is so important. Check, and there's only one way, right? To block this check. Bishop e2, the check is with the rook, right? Only way, bishop e2, and now how do we continue? Well, there are several ways here, but the most direct, beautiful, and lethal one is this. Pause the video if you want. It's the following. Rook takes e2. Brilliant move. Spectacular move. Let's see why. Can the rook be captured with the queen? No. Why? Because it's pinned. So it must be captured with the king. Simple as that. And so why have we given up the exchange? Giving up the exchange means giving up a rook for a minor piece, either the bishop or the knight. We've given up this exchange because now we're not even going to move this queen, but we'll go in with knight takes d4 check. All of our pieces are working like a charm. The king must move. Why? Because it's receiving a check from the knight. Could it go backwards? Well, no, that would be a huge mistake because bishop takes f3 would simply follow. It couldn't be recaptured because knight takes f3 check would follow and I take the queen. Nor could the queen be captured because then knight c2 check would simply follow and I recapture the queen with material advantage. Or in this case, it wouldn't be material advantage, but a checkmate would follow. It would be queen takes knight c2 check. The king would have to move, for example, to f1, and then the rook would enter on d1 and it would be checkmate. Therefore, the king cannot move backwards, okay? So where does this king have to go after the check? Well, the king can only go to one square, and that square is f1. It might seem like everything is defended, but no. Simply now, queen takes c4, and we keep the initiative. See? We don't let our opponent breathe, so they don't turn the situation around on us. Jack, and it must move. Would it be possible to come here? Mistake. Do you know why? Bishop takes knight. And it couldn't be recaptured because then knight takes f3 check, and I take the queen again. So here they've lost the knight, and the position would still be an absolute disaster. The rook would enter, the knight takes c2, okay? And this would be an absolute disaster. So it can only come here to gun 1. There's no other way, see? And so how do we finish this game? Knight takes knight, check. The king can't move because I take the queen. With rook or knight, well, the only thing they can do is take this knight because the king can't go anywhere anyway. The queen's here, the knight's here, only option is to take the knight. But now look at this. I'm sure many of you would say, I'll take the queen. Taking the queen would be a mistake. If I take the queen, knight takes rook would follow, threatening our queen, defending this point, and although, careful, our advantage would let us win with good play, it wouldn't be the same advantage we have now, because our opponent would have 2 rooks for the queen. And watch out, because that is very good compensation. So the correct move, do you know to this? Taking this pawn, bishop takes f3. And why, chess teacher, do you prefer taking a pawn over taking the queen? Because we're not just taking a pawn. Watch out. We're threatening something much stronger. If yeah, correct. We're threatening queen g4 check and then queen g2 checkmate. Therefore, they must be very careful here to stop this threat. They don't have time. They don't have time to move the queen away from the threat. Many of you will think, well, I'll move the queen while defending this checkpoint. And this wouldn't be possible because we'd simply follow with the brilliant move, pay attention, because this is impressive, queen f1 check, sacrificing the queen, because when it's taken, rook d1 would be made. Therefore, the queen can't go here either. What resource does the player with the white pieces find to defend themselves? He finds this resource, rook h3. Why? Because now, when the queen comes to g4, which is actually what happened in the game, white can defend with this move. Watch out! It's true that we can win the queen, but they can too. What do we get now? Would it be a good idea to capture the queen? Well, no, it wouldn't be a good idea, because then the game would be equalized. We both traded queens. The right thing is to do this. Queen h5. What are we threatening? Very simple. We're only threatening. Queen on 1. Checkmate. Do you see it? Very important. We threaten checkmate and we threaten the queen without being threatened ourselves. So, how can they stop this checkmate? There's only one move. They now give up the exchange, rook for bishop. Now it wouldn't be checkmate. And now what do we take? The rook or the queen? Again, important. We must take the rook. If we take the queen, we'd simply be in a fairly balanced position. If we take the rook, what's happening? Well, we're threatening two things at once. We're threatening the queen, but if the queen moves, we'd simply enter with check and it would end up being checkmate. So, what should the white pieces do here? They can't do absolutely anything. Why? Because they have two options: either give up the queen. If they do anything else, I'll take the queen, and if they decide to save it, as I just told you, we'd simply enter with the rook check, and then rook h1 would simply be checkmate. Therefore, here after rook, here after queen takes rook, the player with the white pieces resigned. What do you think, friends, of this great lesson and great game? If you really enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I truly appreciate that because that way I can see that you love the content too. Tell me exactly what you thought of the game in the comments, and if you want to go a step further, you can subscribe to my completely free weekly newsletter, where every Sunday I send you exclusive extra information and additional classes by email for free. You have it right down here in the description or by searching online for Chess Teacher Newsletter. I hope you guys really loved this video, and as always, I'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends. Bye!